lessons were learned. Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Sailor. I am a 1L in law school. I just finished my first semester, so I'm 1/6 of the way through, and that is exactly what today's video is going to be about. So we're just going to kind of go through all of the life lessons and highs and lows of first semester of 1L. This is going to be a two-part series. I wanted to do one part where everything is still very fresh in my brain. Like, I literally finished my last final about 24 hours ago, so all very, very fresh. This just happened. And then we're going to film, I'm gonna do a part 2 eventually once I get my grades back, because I want to be able to do like a reflection that accurately, I guess, sums up. I'll know more about, you know, if my study habits worked as far as getting good grades at that point, but definitely wanted to sit down and film a video right after it all ended so that I could really just still have everything fresh in my mind still. So first off, we have classes, and obviously my experience with classes this semester is very different than the average, you know, first semester of law school, because COVID and I was mostly online, with the exception of a few in-person sessions. So different in that way, but a lot of it was very much still the general law school experience. I feel like, you know, still had those cold calls, which are a big thing. That I think that's one thing that's very different from undergrad, is you volunteer versus you don't get a choice in law school. Like, the professor decides that today's your day to get called on, and that's, you're gonna get called on as much as they want to call on you. But I will say, I think cold calls are a thing that's definitely easy to overthink, and I think that at the end of the day, they don't, first of all, they don't matter. They literally, like, your whole grade is your final. If you screw up a cold call, yeah, you have made a mistake for the day, like you messed up a little bit, but it doesn't affect your grade. And people forget them. Like, it's not like everyone is going to remember that one time the professor called on you and you completely didn't know the answer, you didn't do the reading. Like, I really couldn't tell you about any of my classmates, whether they had good or bad cold calls. Like, it's all, you're all there and you're all kind of in the same place. So, fun sirens. It's really easy in the moment to get really stressed out about them, and I know that I have, and I probably still will continue to, but I think it's worth noting that, like, they don't matter. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's kind of the point. It's all fine. You'll learn the material. One thing that I think I don't regret at all about the way that I started law school, and then kind of the way that this semester transitioned, is the way that I briefed cases. And so when you start out in law school, like, reading judicial opinions, it's probably like a brand new thing unless you took some law classes in undergrad. And even then, sometimes, like, I never read a full judicial opinion in my undergrad law classes. I read papers about legal theories, but didn't ever really spend a lot of time reading, you know, actual court decisions. And there is kind of an art to reading them, and it's different than reading an academic paper or reading a textbook. It's written differently. You have to learn how to read that, and you have to learn how to pick out the information. And when I first started the semester, I was doing these super detailed case briefs for every single case that I read, where I was, you know, listing out, like, the facts, the procedural history, the rules of law, the reasoning, the decision, the holding, the disposition, any concurrences and dissents that were attached. So I had a super long detailed case briefs, and then about halfway through the semester, I flipped a switch, prompted by one of my professors, who was like, you guys are ready to be able to do this now. And that was kind of my boost of confidence to switch over to book briefing, where instead of actually writing out briefs, I was literally just reading cases, and then I was going in and I was highlighting with different colors the same sorts of things. So highlighting the facts, and then highlighting the holding and the rules of law and the reasoning with different highlighters. And because I had done all that prep throughout the beginning of the semester, because I had really worked on dissecting the cases at the beginning of the semester, it gets so much easier and you're able to do it so much faster and so much more effectively, and like, you know, just create a little rainbow in your textbook and it be able to find exactly what you need. There was a moment where I was taking a practice exam and I literally wanted to mention something from a dissent and I knew what case it was from, and I literally just had to go flip through and like find my like highlighted section because I had highlighted part of the dissent and made it super easy to get to that and to wrap my head around it. But it's because I built that super strong foundation at the beginning. So that is like something that I like, big recommendation. And I don't regret the way that I did that at all. I think starting off with the full briefs and then switching over to not doing that by the end made a lot of sense and was a great way to learn how to read that way. And this way I'll be able to start next semester still just continuing to do the book briefing where I'm not writing out full case briefs for every single case. I think balance is something that was really important to remember. There are a lot of times where you always feel like you should be doing something and you feel like maybe you're going to like get behind if you're not constantly working on whatever. And it is so important to find ways to make time for yourself, whatever that may be. So for me, it was always working out, and like that's just something that I put in my schedule. I've done a whole video about how I literally just like throw that into my schedule before I touch anything else in my week, because you need time for yourself. Law school is obviously super stressful, and you have to make a conscious effort to take care of yourself and to make time for things that you care about, because otherwise it can and it will take over your life. Now let's talk outlining. So this is a process that you can start at any point during the semester, and basically it's just creating a giant study guide for yourself for your exam. And you know, you can start it super early, start it finals week. I started somewhere in the middle. I was doing regular like wrap-ups throughout the semester where I was writing to myself like summaries of the cases at the end of each week to wrap my head around it. But then I started making my actual outlines for the exams much more like mid-October range, and I think that that makes sense. I think I probably would have been scrambling a lot more if I hadn't started that early. I think that helps a lot. It makes finals week in general a little bit less stressful and a little bit less, you know, I need to be doing everything constantly because I haven't done anything at all so far this semester to review. If you start early, you save yourself a little bit of stress at the end. Not that it will get that much less stressful, but at least a little bit. You come into things a little bit more prepared, which I think helped a lot. Now let's talk finals, because that's the thing that just happened. So obviously a lot of pressure on those, since they do make up your entire grade, which is something that I never experienced in undergrad. Usually my finals like meant nothing by that point. And I was calculating, you know, the lowest grade I could get on the final and still manage an A in the class. Like, be like, I could get a 60 and still get an A in the class, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, you don't get that sort of, you know, relaxed state of mind going into law school finals, because they do count for your entire grade. Now, I had 3 very different finals experiences. So the first one was my contracts exam, which was my first ever law school final, which was a rough way to start, and I really spent a little bit of time after that exam questioning myself and whether or not I was smart enough to be in law school, until the group me blew up with everyone else being like, so what just happened? So that was good. Normally I hate like looking at group chats after an exam. I just don't want to talk about it, but the collective moment of what just happened was a valuable moment, but definitely was a lot of out of left field. Multiple choice questions in law school are so tricky because, you know, there's so much that you're just like, if this fact goes this way, this is your answer, but if it goes the other way, this is your answer. Then trying to put that into a multiple choice question where like there's no option that's like yes but no, there's only a yes and a no. Anyways, so that's a thing. It's probably the first time in my life that I've finished an exam and genuinely had no idea how I did or what to expect from a result. I can usually like tell, like I usually had a pretty good grasp on coming out of exams, like I did this really well, or I definitely didn't do as well on this as I could have. And this one, it's a giant question mark, but we'll find out eventually. Next was torts, and that one was, it's a little concerning. I told one of my friends that I think I might have had fun writing that exam, which is a little concerning, but it was basically giant fact pattern, 4 hours, write as many causes of action as you possibly can, and I did exactly that, and somehow cranked out 7,000 words in 4 hours. I will never be able to do that again. I don't know how I did it to begin with, but that happened. So exam adrenaline apparently does weird things, but that one was very different. And you know, you're able to, with a giant answer like that, you're able to account for like a court could make this ruling or they could do this one, and so you're able to like more appropriately account for all of those like random potential considerations rather than on a multiple choice test. So you don't get a choice, like you don't get to choose your professors and one else, so I can't tell you like try to pick a professor that gives an essay exam, but just as like a general note, essay test questions in law school majorly preferable, at least in my opinion and experience. And then finally we had my property exam, and property was same, you know, concept as far as like big writing questions, shorter time period, so I had 3 hours on this one. And this had a lot more like policy things in there. So instead of, you know, giant fact pattern, list all causes of action, we had like some traditional like issue spotting questions, but also questions about policy and questions about like general themes of the course. And for me, as someone who like is a policy person and genuinely likes that stuff, and like that's kind of what I want to do post-grad, loved that. I enjoyed that exam as well. And I'm well aware that I sound like a giant nerd being like, I enjoyed an exam, but as it happens. That's another thing, is I came into the semester like convinced that I knew what classes I was gonna like and what I wasn't gonna like, and I was right on torts. I knew I was going to like torts, and I did actually enjoy that class. But there is definitely something about professors that make a class and the way that they teach, and whether or not that like blends with the way that you think about things. So with property, I had done some of the introductory courses through PowerScore and then through Harvard 0L course, and was convinced that I would hate property. Was like absolutely convinced like this is an awful subject and I am going to dread this class, and then had like the best professor and loved the class, and it made so much more sense to me. Like, I mean, I'm still not gonna like be a lawyer who goes into like wills and estates, like that's not gonna be what I do, but when you have the chance to like think about a subject in a way that like more closely reflects like what you're interested in and why you're at law school, like that's the good stuff. Like that's the moment where you're like, okay, this is like, this works. And so there will be classes like that, and there will be classes like contracts where I finished that contracts exam and knew the same thing that I knew also at the beginning of the semester, which is that I don't want to do contract law. So some things are like that, and some things you will actually like surprise yourself, find that you enjoy, have a good time. I also think one thing that I did this semester and I don't regret at all is getting involved with student organizations, especially because, you know, COVID times and everything is shut down. So like you don't get to like hang out in the courtyard area of the law school and like just run into people. So getting involved in student organizations and getting to know people that way was really, really valuable, as far as just like reaching out to people outside my section and getting to know other people, getting to know some older students. Also just like find ones that you're interested in. So like I am in an organization that's related to like reproductive justice because that is something that I'm really passionate about and have been passionate about. And then also just like generally like a political one, and was able to, you know, attend different lectures about different current events that I'm interested in and wanted to learn more about. So get involved. You don't have to actually like, you know, be on a board or an exec, but going to meetings, learning about aspects of law that you're actually interested in, I definitely think is a very, very important thing. Something I like to think I might have done, I like could have done differently, but at the same time I don't know how I would have, is office hours, and genuinely just like showing up at their office hours and like not even asking questions related to class. I literally went into her office to talk to her about virtual office, obviously, to talk to her about clerkships, and genuinely just learned so much. And getting to know professors is just, it's just good. One thing I could have done is did more of that, because I did that like the very last night of the semester. Like I did that right before I went home for Thanksgiving break, was go to her office hours and just have a casual chat. And I wish I had done that more, and had done that earlier on in the semester. I think sometimes it's a little bit confusing because if you're like me, I don't tend to have a ton of questions. Like I'm never the person in my class who's raising my hand after every discussion trying to like ask a question, or like, you know, pose a new hypothetical. That's just not who I am. That stuff doesn't come to me. I'm the person who's like scrambling to come up with questions at the end of job interviews where like, do you have any questions for us? And I'm like, I gotta think of something because they want me to ask one. So that's not who I am, and I'm not going to like fabricate questions that I don't actually want to know the answers to, but find ways to connect with professors. I think that's something I'm going to focus on more next semester, is like finding little ways to connect with professors that maybe aren't, you know, asking questions about class, but are other points where I can have, you know, conversation with them about similar interests. And I think my final thing is there are gunners. They're annoying. If you've never heard the word gunner before, it's just basically someone who is trying very hard, and not necessarily in a good way, because we're all trying hard, but in a way that's a little bit much. Don't be one of those people. If you want to be ostentatious about how much you know, go to a professor's office hours. Do it there. Be respectful of your fellow students. Don't ask an insane question just to show off that you're smart. We all know you're smart. You can show it in other ways. Stay tuned for the part 2 where we chat a little bit more about what worked and what didn't once I have data to back what worked and what didn't. Until then, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. You can hit the subscribe button down below to see more from me, and I'll see you guys soon for another new video that will not be super law school related, because I have 4 weeks of freedom ahead of me. I'll still be doing stuff, but probably not to the sheer level of chaos that you've witnessed in recent vlogs from me. Thank goodness. So I'll see you then. Bye.